Welcome to Teachers Teaching on the Prairie, located in southeast Colorado. This podcast will explore issues and best practices in education. It's really a self-directed group of classroom teachers getting together to seek answers, explore successes, and share ideas. Teachers Teaching on the Prairie.
Is Kelly Smith, and we are here with Teachers Teaching on the Prairie. And I have asked three of my colleagues to come in today, and we're going to be exploring the topic of building your unit and that backwards design and how we can build understanding in our kids by truly organizing and building that unit from where we want them to end up, and then figuring out where we need to begin. So to start with, I'm going to have each of you please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you teach. And we are here, of course, all from Junta High School. We have high school teachers and we have junior high teachers as well, and somebody who teaches both. So Melissa, why don't you start? Tell us.
I'm Melissa Ainsley, and I teach 8th and 11th grade English.
I'm Julie Minklejohn, and I teach all the 10th graders and pre-AP juniors and AP seniors.
I'm Kelly Eddington, and I teach 7th grade writing and 8th grade English.
So we are, as a district, really delving into building units, matrix, really looking at the evidence outcomes and standards that the states have given to us. And one of our directives is to build units. So we're kind of deep into that. So I want to just start the conversation out with let's start it with what do we think this backward design is? How would you explain that to a lay person? How would you explain it to somebody who was first dealing with this and wanted to begin using it?
You know, I think that backward design is something that is different from the way that I was taught to teach, which is, you know, when you're taught to teach, you come up with a unit and you think through all the cool activities that you want to do with that unit, and then you figure out your final test and what that's going to look like. And with backwards design, you still get to do all the cool things, but you start out thinking about what it is that you want the students to know at the end. What you want them to understand, the big things that they're going to take with them on into their lives from your classroom, and then build that from there rather than starting out with the cool ideas first.
And I think the fact that you start with those standards or those evidence outcome is part of that viable and guaranteed curriculum too, that a student at Junta High School and a student at Cherry Creek are still kind of across the state, and eventually I would assume across the nation, are going to be getting the same kind of education, level of education as well.
It also helps letting the students know what they are accountable for and what they will be learning in the end so that they can build up to it.
That's a great point. Mm-hmm. And making them an active participant in their education.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know from the beginning what you're wanting in the end, and so you know for a fact if they've accomplished that.
Really has changed where it's not that gotcha kind of the veil's lifted. Here's where we want you to be. Here's what we want you to know, and they really are partners. It allows them the opportunity to be partners in that process and that education.
It helps them, yeah, exactly. It helps them to know what they will be learning, because with the I can statements, with the evidence outcomes and the standards that we are supposed to be doing, with those I can statements, it helps them really take ownership of that. And instead of whenever I was going to school, it was like, okay, why are we learning this? What's the purpose of it? Well, now they know up front and they can build to it. And you reiterate, going through it. This is what we're doing. What are we doing today? And they're able to understand.
Yeah, I think the book, Grant Wiggins there, I think that first part of it is that understanding by design. And I think that's really what you're doing is allowing kids to understand where they're going and why they're going,
and helps us as well.
Absolutely. So tell us, I know Melissa and Kelly have been working with the Hunger Games, which is a really hot book right now. The movie's about to come out, so it was a great choice in order to generate some enthusiastic learners with your students. So tell us a little bit about that unit. And you guys have also been collaborative in that, haven't you, working together. So, and that's a problem. I guess we're talking about a little later on. So this is going to be interesting in that the size of our school is small. So there are a lot of singletons and a lot of teachers that are the only teacher of that, particular class and do a lot of this alone. So working together using that kind of backward design, how did that work with this unit?
It definitely helped me because I was able to get Kelly's input. And also, we can't leave out Cheryl Henderson, who was our instructional coach, who was amazing in getting us the information. We were able to obtain a packet to help us learn, but we went off of Kelly's idea with she sparked the interest for us to do the Hunger Games, and then we were able to take that and read the book. We both read it first, so we knew what the outcomes was and what to expect from the students, and then we looked through it. And it was really great to build on that, and we were definitely able to learn as we were building our units what we can and can't do and what we should incorporate and what we shouldn't incorporate. But it definitely helps with the engagement. I've never seen so much engagement with something because it's something the kids can really read and they can relate to it in a sense, because the whole foundation was based off of a reality TV show, and so they were able to really grasp it. They're like, oh, well, I know that. I've seen this before. And just the enthusiasm was great with the whole unit. And then that helps is to be able to get the engagement.
Picking the right material that kids are interested in.
And we knew that the movie was coming out in March, and so their timing was perfect, and we knew that we needed to get the whole unit in before that, because we knew at the end we wanted to take everybody to the movie and have them do a writing piece and compare.
So they're going to see the movie and compare it?
Yeah, compare the book.
So it's not just a celebration, yay, we got through it. You get to see the movie, but there's a learning component.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of our evidence outcomes was persuasive writing piece, I believe. And so they have to do a compare and contrast and then persuade us why this one's better than the other. Why everybody's so in tune to the movie. Oh, well, I have to go see the movie.
Evidence from the movie or evidence from the book to support their positions. So did you guys start then? You knew you had this good topic. So that's for one, the best, getting a good idea is like the start. So you have this good idea. Where did you start? Did you start with the standards and the evidence outcomes and that? And do you remember how you planned the unit?
We started with the movie, that the movie was coming out, and then
so you knew that you wanted to time it right in there.
Right.
So you knew, and we have the end of the quarter here at this time as well. So you were working with that.
And then Kelly brought in the whole.
We looked at the standards that needed to be covered. That were remaining in the year, and what we needed to cover, and incorporated different lessons to accomplish that.
And based on our matrix, it worked out that we did it, and we were able to incorporate and pull bits and pieces.
So you knew that you wanted to finish with this writing piece that was persuasive. So you knew you wanted to compare those two mediums of literature, visual literature, and then the reading that they did. What were some of the units that you had in this?
Figurative language. There was a figurative language piece.
I shouldn't say units, but concepts or learning objectives.
A learning objective. There was the figurative language. They need to know the similes and the personification and the metaphors and this and that. And then there was also one that had to do with dialogue and incorporating Greek myths and knowing about one of the pieces.
There was a lot of symbolism that we talked about, lots of vocabulary.
So when you were
determining the meaning of the figurative words, yes, that was analyzing the impact of specific levels. But there was another piece that the whole thing.
So did you, when you were looking at the chapters and the individual reading of the chapters, were these components that you discussed chapter by chapter? And did you go through and look at a calendar and say, we have 4 weeks, so in this first 4 weeks we need to cover these chapters, and so that you had them done? Did you use a calendar in any way to schedule?
We used it as a guideline. We knew originally we had planned on 5 weeks, but it
was a
need
learning
more
process.
Yeah, we definitely need more than 5 weeks. But we can do some things differently next time.
Which is any case, in any unit, going back and reflecting upon that. So Julie, you have the AP program. How do you use backward design in the upper levels of 11th and 12th grade that you teach?
Well, one thing I try to do, especially with the AP, because they ideally have been exposed to the backwards design template throughout pre-AP and previous years. With AP, something that I've tried is a literature seminar where I give them a list of books that they can choose from off of the AP list that we have access to. And then in small groups, they do this themselves. So they go through the whole unit planning template themselves, come up with the essential questions, and actually teach the book to the class. So it's a cool experience because it gives them the opportunity to actually teach and to have this feel for all of these, what goes into that. And they say that you learn something a lot better when you teach it yourself. Mm-hmm. But then the whole class is going through it with them, and so they all have that opportunity.
I think that's interesting because one of those upper level, outcomes is a more independent world. Somebody who can take charge of what they want to learn and how they want to learn it. So it gives them a lot of choice in what they're doing. And
with the new Common Core, there's so much built in there about leading group discussions, about managing groups, that kind of thing. I mean, that's pretty much one whole standard. So that really leads them into that as well, taking charge of that.
So how do you set them up for success in that? What kind of guidelines do you give them and instruction do you give them for how they set up their learning experience using that backward design?
I model it first. So with the first novel that we do together, which is Brave New World, I do a full unit and I make it very transparent to them. Here's what I'm doing now. Here's why I'm doing this. Do you see how you're responding to this? Do you, and all the way through, take them through some different ideas of ways that they might hit those targets. So it's very clear to them what's happening, what I'm doing as their teacher. And so then, and I sit down, we do multiple conferences. I do multiple conferences with each small group before they're even ready to teach. And everyone, they have to have different components. Okay, this time I want to see your audiovisual pieces. This time I want to see your discussion pieces. All of these different things so that I know that when it's their go day, they're ready. And they know what they need to do. And then, of course, I guide and tweak along the way and make sure that they're hitting the things that they need to hit.
Which leads to some of that. Anytime you build a unit, you have to, and you made it through, you have to go back and reflect upon that. So talk to us about, everybody here, some of the advantages of this. What are some of those advantages of using that backward design that you see with yourself or with your students?
Going back to the whole taking accountability for what they're learning. That's one of the biggest ones that I've seen because they know what the expectations are up front. They know what they are to know by the end of the unit. And so they're able to build on those and have the building blocks to get to where they're supposed to be. And also for us as teachers to know what our outcomes are and what we want, and if we need to make tweaks, we can make tweaks. And if we find something that doesn't work, we can go in and switch that for the next class or whatever and see if that one works. And by the third time around with, maybe we finally found something, okay, well this works, and then go back to the first class that didn't quite jive and say, okay, let's see if this one works this way. So it's just, it allows for flexibility.
Well, and by using backwards design, we know what we want them to accomplish in the end, and we know throughout the unit whether or not they are accomplishing that and what we are doing with them is we can tell whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, or if we need to change that for the next year in order for them to reach that evidence outcome.
I think one of the things I like about it is that it forces me as a teacher anyway to think beyond just teaching to a test, teaching to like the final unit test or the final unit project. You're thinking in terms of a much bigger picture. How is this going to help this student later on in the year, later on in following years in this subject area, in their lives in general? You're thinking a lot bigger picture than just that little tiny finite unit. And while we're done, okay, let's move on to something else. It's really connecting everything more clearly, I think.
And I listen to all of you, and I hear it's also a way, time is so precious in education. We have a limited number of hours and days with students that for the teacher, it really forces you to use that time well, to be very planned about what you're having. And you teaching your kids how to do this really teaches them the importance of organizing their time and managing their time to get all of this in, because the due date, the test date is not going to change. So, and I think that's a life skill for all, and a valuable use of the precious resource of time that we have. What would be one of the things that in your, the Hunger Games that you would go back and change and check and do differently in the organization of this unit?
I think the main problem that we had with doing the Hunger Games is we had two different teachers doing the same thing, and we each had 2 8th grade classes, and we had one class set for each of us of books, and that was a problem because the kids were not able to take the books home, and so most of our time spent in class was reading. And if we could have them do some reading outside of class and do more activities that go along with the unit, that would be helpful.
Well, and then having more discussion, more life skill discussion type things that they can incorporate with and make more connections, because the whole purpose is to make the text meaningful. And so you want to be able to make that connection so that they can go back and say, okay, well, I remember this, so I can apply it here, or I can apply it here. And being able to have like a Socratic seminar or some situation like that, so we can have a academic discussion about the book, and so it gets their mind thinking and using that vocabulary and using terminology from the book. Having more time, of course, would be a godsend, but it doesn't always work out that way.
I'll go back to what Julie said. Who's teaching is doing the learning, or who's talking, or who's discussing is doing the learning. So it is valuable, those kind of activities. Well, I think we've come to the conclusion of this, so I'm just kind of let you go around here, and any closing thoughts or discoveries, how you've grown as a teacher using this backward design model in planning your lessons.
I think for me, it's helped me just to be more organized. I know what I need to teach, what they need to accomplish, and the first time you do it, it may not be exactly what needs to happen the next year. You may need to make some changes to tweak it a little bit, but you have a guideline to go by, and it's easy to make those changes. And again, you can fix your timeline. Ours was a 5-week timeline, and we know now we need a little bit more time. But if we did have more, more books available, more resources, maybe we would still be able to follow that 5-week guideline. It's just going to be, when we do get more resources, which we are planning on doing, then it'll be another testing period, I guess, to see if that 5 weeks works. And if not, we'll just go in and tweak it again and add a little more time or make those changes. But in the end, we know that we are accomplishing what we set out to accomplish.
Awesome. Anything else? I really do thank you guys for coming and being a part of number 2 of our discussion here at Teachers Teaching on the Prairie. So if anybody has any ideas, listening, has any other ideas of topics that you'd like to hear us explore, just send it to the website.